All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. I am your host, Cardon Ellis, with Cody the Oracle.
Hey, everyone.
And today we're actually going to talk a little bit about a story that hits close to home. Our state senator, Scott Wilk, has actually been the escort of one Jessica Biel, celebrity and Hollywood superstar, throughout the California Capitol up in Sacramento, talking about vaccines. Now, she's gotten a lot of pushback for it because it is a controversial topic, but we really need to hammer this out. Our show is Problem Solver Politics, and we try and solve problems. And obviously, the information necessary to know about vaccines and the disinformation about vaccines is important to all of us that are children that have had to worry about this and children that have actually needed exemptions, such as, believe it or not, my daughter. Her cancer treatments wiped out all of her vaccinations. And to get her enrolled in public school, in the process of catching her up on her vaccines, which would take a long time, we had to get a medical exemption from the vaccination law. So believe it or not, there's people that actually might need this and celebrities that actually might have a point and not be conspiracy theorists if they're suggesting the government might not be doing something right. So first off, we applaud Jessica Biel for her desire to get involved in politics. I love it when people, in a well-informed way, actually try and use their celebrity status, their bully pulpit, shall we say, for good. So Jessica Biel is getting some fierce pushback, first from the New York Times. We're going to summarize a little bit of what the situation is. Oh, actually, Cody, did I send you a picture of her with our state senator?
You did. Everyone already saw already.
Oh, they did? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
nice.
Yeah, she's still stunning.
No, I mean, beautiful woman. Like, you know,
yeah,
you don't just necessarily lose that. You know what I mean? It's a beautiful woman.
So anyway, I know Veronica Mars. What's her name? What's the actress that was Veronica Mars?
Oh, I'm blanking on her name. She was in Deadwood. I can't remember her name. I'm forgetting Sarah Marshall, I believe, is on the film she was in.
I'm totally blanking too.
We can name things she was in.
Anyway, I know that she gets furious on red carpet events, and justifiably so. I actually really like this point. This is one of like the few things of 10th wave feminism that actually I think is worthwhile. Kristen Bell, that's it. I love it how she reprimands reporters that ask her what she's wearing before they ask her about her work, because she noticed that her male co-stars always get complimented first on their work and then asked what they're wearing, but the female co-stars always get asked what they're wearing and then maybe we talk about their acting work. So that's really funny. And with that in mind, we'll just compliment Jessica Biel about how stunning she is. Hey, but we actually talked about her merit as a lobbyist first, though. So, Kristen, don't be angry.
One thing I think is a little interesting going through this article we saw already, and I'm on screen now, you can see a bit more. It's a little interesting to me, the idea that there really is a lot of celebrities who've thrown their opinions into the vaccination kind of field, so to speak. In this article, they mention Robert De Niro and Jenny McCarthy have also taken the, I don't know, similar stance. So it's just really interesting to me. That's obviously it affects everyone. I get it. But it's always kind of fascinated me how many celebrities seem to always speak out on this issue in particular. Does that make sense?
Or I think it also draws a lot of ire. And this ire...
I don't understand. Why does it draw ire? From who?
Well let's read it. Like, if you just read these first 3 sentences... I really love it when celebrities step up and get involved in some of these political things, especially the leftist or the liberal ones. And I know I'm assuming she's liberal, which isn't fair. But I love it when celebrities all of a sudden get involved in these politically charged arguments, because now they have a chance to experience the fake news. And by fake news, I mean hyper-biased news that is the New York Times, the LA Times, and just see how she's painted. This comes from June 13th, 2019 by Julie Bozeman. All right. And Patricia Massier and Dan Levin over at the New York Times.
It took 3 people to write an article saying that Jessica Biel had pushback from her political opinions.
Yeah, it reminds me of how Freddie Mercury in the credits for his song Bohemian Rhapsody was like written by Freddie Mercury, produced by Freddie Mercury, lyrics by Freddie Mercury. And now you look at all like these modern Beyonce and Jay-Z songs, and there's like 50 producer credits, 30 writer credits.
Some songwriter pulled a song out of a desk like, hey, anyone can sing this one? Cool.
And the choruses are like baby, 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 boom.
Anyway, getting back.
So this is how I don't want to say it's a hit piece, but I don't think it's represented here fairly. It says, the pair sat smiling in a picture posted on Instagram. The actress Jessica Biel, who became famous on the television series Seventh Heaven, next to Robert F. Kennedy Jr., an activist who has spread misinformation about childhood vaccines. So you already know where this is going. Next sentence. The image taken in Sacramento this week as Ms. Biel and Mr. Kennedy lobbied against a bill that would tighten immunization requirements instantly placed Ms. Biel in the company of vaccine skeptics and among the many Hollywood celebrities who have taken a stance on the issue. If you actually read what Jessica Biel is saying, she's not a vaccine skeptic. She's skeptic of government control over people's decision making. And it's very unfair that the New York Times paints her this way. And I'm not here trying to defend Jessica Biel. Who knows? Maybe I'll never meet her in my life. Okay? But this completely disincentivizes an honest conversation about very important controversial issues when somebody who gets up to say, hey, wait a second, I protest this law about vaccines is purposefully misrepresented by supposedly college-educated journalists who are supposed to get this right as somebody who's saying, oh, I oppose vaccines. You can oppose a law about vaccines without opposing vaccines themselves. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm in that camp. Are you in that camp, Cody?
I mean, I'm generally in the camp that science is just done by people and they make mistakes. So we should give ourselves some room here for them to be wrong and us not to be negatively impacted by that. That's just generally speaking where I lie on this stuff. Because it's easy to say, well, scientists say it's fine. I'm like, okay, but then they come back 10 years later and say we were wrong, it's not. Like, this happens a lot because humans are imperfect and ultimately they're behind the science. It's not like it exists in a vacuum. People make mistakes. Protect ourselves when we can. I like that.
And you just reminded me of how the CDC just came out a couple of years ago saying, hey, do you remember all of that, not misinformation, do you remember everything we said about sodium in our diets? How sodium's bad for you?
Well,
actually, you can have all the sodium you want.
Yeah.
Think how many divorces were started by men that had been on low sodium diets and had just gotten cranky from it, and women who had been on low sodium diets and just gotten cranky from it started bickering, and next thing you know, they're divorced.
Well, no, I mean, this kind of was shocking to me. I don't want to get too far off topic here, but yeah, I mean, speaking of what we sometimes look at these authority figures and assume they'll be right. I mean, when I was a kid, I was taught about the food pyramid. And now the people are crazy. It's a bunch of crap. It's not true at all.
It was a joke thrown together by the largest food-producing corporations as a favor to the USDA.
But without getting all over the food pyramid. What I mean, though, is, like, there are times where we hear things from people we trust and, we look up to in their field. They must know what they're talking about. But we have to remember sometimes they don't. And so, yeah, when it is come to we're going to be injecting your children with these things that they should be healthy, should be fine, shouldn't be an issue, should just work. Like, okay, but maybe that's where we should be kind of, like, well, maybe. But then in the inverse, if you have there's an illness and you can vaccine 98% of people, but it's contagious enough where it doesn't matter if 2% don't have. I mean, you also can't just let people keep an illness alive by refusing vaccines.
Yeah, for me, there is no difference between the vaccination of the American public and the participation of that American public in World War II. Our country has always given space to conscientious objectors, okay? Muhammad Ali did not participate in the draft as a conscientious objector, okay? Bernie Sanders, beloved Bernie Sanders of the left, tried to apply multiple times for the Vietnam War as a conscientious objector until he actually aged out of the draft, okay? We cannot say that we allow skepticism for God, but we don't allow skepticism for government, okay?
But it is also, like I said, though, like sometimes if a large enough percentage of people refuse to take a vaccine that actually is working of suppressing a certain illness, it could lead to greater public harm.
Yes, but you have to ask yourself, is that a government problem or an education problem? We cured that problem of the disease of cigarettes
I think it's a
by educating
problem.
kids against
We're
cigarettes.
talking about cigarettes. Like, what if there is something we have a vaccine for?
Okay.
Well, to be frank, top of my head,
well,
I
let's
couldn't tell
say
you
what if
those
there
things
is.
are, but I'm sure there are, yeah.
Okay, let's say what if there is, but this is very important, okay? And there's two ethics at work right here, okay? So first off, let it be known. both me and Cody believe you're crazy if you don't vaccinate your kids, because the amount of science that shows that it greatly benefits them and spares them some of the most horrible diseases the rest of the world knows on a daily basis is overwhelming, okay? So this part of my brain is saying, as a parent, it's unethical not to vaccinate your kids because it gives them such a vastly better opportunity at having a wholesome, healthy life that you're a psycho parent if you don't. But on the same token, you can't call yourself a liberal. You cannot call yourself emotionally or intellectually or scientifically honest either if you don't look at the inverse of what you're proposing. If you're saying a government can forcibly inject can force somebody to inject something in your bodies. Dear liberals, dear Democrats, you went furious over the misnamed Muslim ban that lasted a couple of months, where Donald Trump was given power to not allow a certain minority group to travel, in your words. Do you want to give that same president? Do you want to give Donald Trump 2.0 in 2023 when he's not worried about re-election? Okay, do you want to give that same Donald Trump the power to, with an executive order, mandate that, let's put in worst case scenarios. We want to lambast Mike Pence for having believed in, what was that, shock therapy for homosexuals? Do we want a law to be passed that says, homosexuals have to be injected? Do we want to have a law that says, Republicans need to be injected?
As far as I know, there are no compelled, I don't know if mandatory or compelled vaccinations for any kind of like mental illnesses. It's really just
but we're only one piece of legislation away.
No, because it's potentially like.
Wait, but Cody, hold on. You bring up a good point. Did not the World Health Organization just declare gaming depression?
It's not a contagious virus, dude. What I'm telling you is they don't vaccine people so you don't get you don't get like I can't even think of anything.
But it's not out of the realm of possibility to believe.
It is to me.
Nobody thought the Muslim ban was going to happen.
What? But it wasn't a Muslim ban. It was a travel ban in countries Obama had already started the motion on. Like, it wasn't like... And by the way, we've done much more drastic things than Muslim ban. We actually said Chinese people aren't allowed for, like, years. Like,
and if you're Japanese, we put you in the internment camp.
But what I mean, like, these things... But what I'm saying is, right now, the way vaccines are set up, they don't vaccine 8-year-olds so they don't become bipolar. The argument, actually...
Now, this was an exaggeration,
but the argument is they vaccinate them so they don't get, like, measles or whatever, and then that's causing these issues further down the line. I mean, I believe autism is one of the things I think I'll flip over right here in the article. Actually, Jenny McCarthy, who was a former host of The View, she spoke about this, and then I guess Robert De Niro, who has a son with autism, spoke about this. And said that they do believe. However, that could be the issue.
Yes, there was a 1997 pamphlet written by a doctor in Britain that suggested that possibly some of the heavy metals, such as mercury and aluminum that are used in the MMR vaccine, could correlate to a rise in autism. It was a suggestion that has been debunked many times over. But the question is...
But I mean, was he speaking of every vaccine ever? I mean, what if he was? But what if he was onto something? There's
no scientific link. Like, there is literally no scientific link.
Okay, but you just said that we can't trust these scientists. Now we can.
No, but see, that's why I'm saying we have to allow rooms for skeptics. Right now, I believe the data and the science, and I've experienced the benefit of being able to travel to third world countries that have had horrible problems with these diseases. Okay, so my personal anecdotal evidence and the scientific evidence that I've been presented with have led me to believe that the science behind vaccines is great. However, I recognize you have to respect the minority position, or you no longer have a society where the majority rules and the minority has rights. You have a system where the majority rules and then the minority gets oppressed by a government that out-legislates their ability to disbelieve.
No, but in this particular instance we're talking about, though, it's a little bit different. If the minority position isn't going to continue to carry this illness that really we have vaccines for and shouldn't exist, I'm sorry, that actually isn't a position I think you should be holding. Like,
okay, well then...
I don't trust vaccines, but I'm just going to, like, walk around with measles and infect
that's
others.
fine, but here's the deeper question. Do you think the government should be able to force a person to inject something into their body against their will?
No, I do. If the government wants to say, state-funded school districts require certain vaccination records for enrollment, and there is other options through either charter or private schools. I would say that is within the realm.
So you're saying there's a reasoned approach to this, which I agree with. But since both of us disagree that we shouldn't have a government forcing people to vaccinate, I think it is very well within bounds for Jessica Biel to suggest this law has flaws.
Oh no!
And she points to a specific family that's a friend of hers that says, hey, if you get rid of these medical exemptions, I have personal loved ones and relatives that will be adversely affected by this for no good reason. It's literally just like smoking cigarettes. I distrusted the scientific companies that said smoking doesn't cause emphysema. And here, look, there's these studies that prove it.
How old are you? Were you talking about the 40s? You saw all these advertisements? What are you talking about?
No, dude. Actually, a lot of that legislation happened in the 80s and 90s. This totally dates me, dog. But look, all I'm trying to say is,
really, I thought it was. Yeah, I guess maybe
they weren't allowed to be in magazines. And I remember when the Marlboro Man died, and they showed that article as part of our DARE and our SANE courses.
Wow,
to
like
keep
dancing
kids,
on his grave.
Yeah, to keep kids out of drugs. Literally. I'm not kidding you. It was literally like a bunch of Democrats like dancing on people's graves. You're right. It's true. But anyway, and they loved the fact that he died of lung cancer. So anyway, look, we've already gone over on this. All I'm trying to say is I was worried throughout 2012, 2013, 2014, and 2015 when Barack Obama was signing all these executive orders and forcing his agenda down the people's throats without the people voting or Congress doing its job. And whenever Democrats said, oh, we like it because these are good ideals that he's pressuring, I always said, it's fine that he's doing stuff most people agree with right now, but what are you going to do when it's a president you don't like and an agenda you don't like? You've established a precedent of executive orders ruling by fiat, okay? And now, if we allow this anti-vaxxer agenda to keep going more and more and more draconian, we're setting ourselves up for a system in which literally the government mandates completely what we do or don't do, and we've gotten rid of conscientious objection. Completely gotten rid of it because they're trying to get rid of religious exemptions, which they already have in many regards.
I just think, like I said, I think this is a slightly different scenario because, I would say depending on because if they do isolate some kind of disease or bacteria or something and it can be completely eradicated with vaccines, I would say it would be in the best interest of society as a whole to not allow people to just say I recuse. Now here's the thing,
alcoholism's a disease. Should we prohibit alcohol like we did in the 20s?
The only times it really matters who isn't vaccinating themselves is if it's a contagious disease. If it isn't contagious, who cares? You suffer. But the premise is we should not have to worry about something contagious out there in the world. We should be able to vaccine for it, and that is where the line gets where it gets tough, man. Because what if a disease doesn't go away because 5% of people refuse to get vaccinated for it? But then what if the 95% of people who did get vaccinated for it develop dementia earlier by 7 years when we prove it? It's tough, man. What is the right answer here? But I don't know. I think it's a discussion we're having.
I think widespread education has convinced the world that the world is round. Therefore, we don't need to outlaw conscientious objection to the idea that the world is round. We allow the flat earthers to say their silly stuff on Twitter, and we allow the flat earthers to make their silly blogs and their blog posts because widespread education has basically debunked that bad theory. So we need to allow widespread education to debunk the theory that vaccines are a bad thing.
But I think that people often bring up the idea, which I think is worth looking into, that perhaps individual vaccines have unintended side effects that we don't know until later.
Oh no, that's totally fair, and I think that's why there needs to be room for these conscientious objectors.
Well, yeah, but then I don't know, man. I think a lot.
You're the biggest skeptic I know.
I know, but like a lot of things, I just think it's one.
And here you are defending vaccine laws.
I'm not defending vaccine laws. What I believe with this stuff, I just think there's some things like stuff like this. There's really. You can debate on if you should or shouldn't get your kid vaccinated, but really we're debating on 5 or 6 other things without talking about them, and I think it becomes difficult. I think that's why you see a lot of really hotly contested debates, because there'll be 4 or 5 fundamental disagreements. People just glaze over and just, you should get your kid vaccinated. No, you shouldn't. And it's well, there's probably some fundamental disagreements in here we're just not addressing. I think that's what happens to people a lot. Because, there is sometimes, like I said, maybe we don't find out for years who was in the right to either abstain from a vaccine or implement. Then it's like, is the government at fault for implementing it? Could we have known? Like, there's all these different discussions we can get into that go on forever, But I think by and large, depending on what the vaccine is for and depending on what the state limits imposed are, I think there's some argument for it.
All right. So Cody the statist and Cardon Ellis signing off. This is Problem Solver Politics.